chapter 11 this time. The Holy Club. The students who called Charles and his followers Methodists did not invent the name. For at least 100 years, it had been a common term of ridicule in church disputes. As the undergraduates used it, though, it referred to the way of life the newly serious young men had undertaken. Charles had persuaded his new group to look with him at the method of study prescribed by the statutes of the university. To their amazement, they discovered that the rules were very strict indeed, particularly those that related to attendance at church services. "Have you the courage," Charles said, "to carry them out to the letter? Our fathers and grandfathers did. Are we less strong than they?" "No," cried William Morgan, a fellow student at Christ Church College. "Of course not," shouted Richard Kirkham, a Merton College scholar. "Then," said Charles, "I have an idea that I think will help us. Let us form a society with rules and regulations that will help us to be strong and to strengthen each other." There was method in Charles's suggestion, because he knew that the idea of a club would be appealing. Clubs were very popular in England in the 18th century, and there was one for every conceivable interest. Why not for a group interested in taking education seriously? "A praiseworthy idea," Richard Kirkham said. "And to show our detractors we are not bothered by name-calling, let us call ourselves the Methodist Club," proposed Charles. They drew up a set of regulations at once. They agreed, among other things: 1. To spend 3 or 4 evenings a week together. 2. To read over in company those portions of the classics which they had already read in private. 3. To read on Sunday evenings some book on divinity. Like so many other religious enthusiasts, the Methodists began to overdo the outward observance of their belief. They took to attending the sacrament of the Lord's Supper 4 times more often than university rules suggested. They were loud in their goodness and self-righteousness, and soon attracted the attention they all but asked for. The name-callers who had first dubbed them Methodists thought up a new term of derision: the Holy Clubbers. This strict life, into which Charles had entered of his own free will, showed up quickly in his scholarship. By the time John returned to Oxford in 1729, Charles had been invited by the university to become a college tutor. Charles called a special meeting of the Holy Club to introduce John to the other members. He asked John to lead them in prayer, and John did, and prayed so powerfully that the group was moved to ask him to assume the leadership in place of Charles. John, of course, had been leading a methodical life for years, but when he had left for Epworth, Charles had resisted every effort John had made to get Charles to follow such a regime. "You are sure, Brother Charles," John said to Charles privately now, "that you really want me to replace you? I warn you, what I will expect of you will not be easy." Charles knew John must be remembering his defiant cry of 2 years before. "What, would you have me be a saint all at once?" "Yes," he said, "I do wish it." "So be it," said John, turning back to the other members of the group. "It is my firm conviction," he said, "that if we are to follow Christ, we must discipline ourselves every moment." He proceeded to draw up for them a far more exacting set of rules than they had had before. He taught them his methodical ways of study and of work. He worked out exactly how much sleep was necessary to each one and exactly how much time had to be wasted in eating. In short, he imposed such a tight discipline on their every move that all joy and spontaneity were removed from their lives. Taking a short vacation in the summer of 1729, Charles went to London to visit his brother Sam at Westminster. Samuel, naturally overjoyed to see his young brother, to whom he had been practically a father for so many years, had planned several entertainments for Charles while he was there. Charles, as befitted his behavior as a guest, attended these affairs, but took no interest in them. Samuel was amazed and disturbed. "You have become so dull and spiritless, Brother Charles," Sam complained. "If I did not have the eye to see you with, I would think you were Brother John and not Brother Charles at all." "I consider that to be a compliment, Brother Samuel," said Charles. "To be like our Brother John is the present goal of my life." "But why?" said Sam, disappointment ringing in his question. "You, always such a wit, such an addition to every gathering. Why let Brother John sap all the enjoyment of life out of you?" For a moment, Charles was aroused. "He that has begun to live by rule has gone a great way toward the perfection of his life," he cried. "What's that?" demanded Samuel. "The gospel according to Brother John? It strikes me as a wholly selfish way of living. Why, the most perfect man who ever lived was Jesus, but he thought always of others before himself. Where have you left room for social consciousness in your pattern for existence, Brother Charles?" "I hope to lead others to follow the methodical life as John has led me," Charles said. Samuel looked as if he would burst into tears. Charles, remembering how close he and Sam had once been, wished he could say something reassuring to his older brother. "Brother Samuel," he said, "when you came to see me at Oxford, you told me I was leaving God out of my life. It was that accusation of yours that started me on the road I'm now traveling." Sam stared at Charles. "I never meant to direct you on such a narrow path." Charles's blue eyes suddenly sparkled. "But why not?" he cried. "Narrow is the gate that leads to life, Brother Samuel." Samuel shook his head. "You can find words in the Bible to apply to any situation. What is important is the way you apply them." Charles started to retort, but Samuel stopped him. "Have you written any poetry lately, Brother Charles?" he asked. "I would be interested to see whether the fault I found with the last I saw has been corrected." "I've written some prayers," said Charles. "Some verses which, set to music, we sing at our meetings." "Meetings?" asked Samuel. "Well, yes," said Charles, and for a moment a smile trembled at the corner of his lips. "They call us the Holy Club at Oxford, because we attend church together on every possible occasion." "It doesn't sound like a term of affection," said Samuel. "It isn't," said Charles. "They don't understand how a group of young men can want to lead a devout and holy life, even while attending a secular college." "Perhaps," suggested Samuel, "they would feel more affection for you if you thought of them occasionally instead of yourselves." "Of them?" repeated Charles. "They don't want us to think of them." "Don't they?" asked Sam. "Perhaps instead of them I should say, other people. He yawned and stretched deliberately, as if to indicate that their conversation had gone on long enough. Keep on that thought, Brother Charles, he suggested, and we'll talk again tomorrow before you leave. The next day, Samuel gave a book to Charles. Here, he said, this is currently the talk of London. It was a long time since Charles had held any book in his hands except scholarly tomes or the Bible. He took Sam's offering unwillingly. When he read the title, though, his face cleared. Serious Call to a Devout and Holy Life by William Law, he said aloud. He looked at Samuel wonderingly. After our conversation of last night, this is hardly the kind of book I would have expected you to give me. He opened the book and read the beginning sentence. Devotion signifies a life given or devoted to God. Why, Brother Samuel, this is just the sort of book my friends and I should have, he cried. Sam smiled. Curiously enough, I agree. On that note, the brothers parted.